First up, we're talking about Ecstasy with author Ivy Pochoda and editor Daphne Durham. Ivy Pochoda is the author of 5 critically acclaimed novels, including Sing Her Down, which won the LA Times Book Prize. She won the Strand Critics Award for Best Novel and the Prix Page America in France, and has been shortlisted for the Edgar Award and the California Book Award. For many years, Ivy taught creative writing at Studio 526 in Los Angeles' Skid Row. She's currently a professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside Palm Desert Low Residency MFA program. She lives in Los Angeles. Daphne Durham is an executive editor at Putnam, where she edits all her favorite writers, including Ivy, Megan Abbott, C.J. Box, Susan Barker, Mason Coyle, and more. Prior to Putnam, she was a founding editor at MCD FSG, where she published Gus Moreno's This Thing Between Us, Andy Davidson's The Boatman's Daughter, and Rachel Eve Moulton's The Insatiable Volt Sisters. Keep an eye out for new books from these writers coming soon. Daphne began her book career at Amazon.com, where she worked for almost 16 years.
I'm thrilled to be here to talk about horror and to introduce Ivy and celebrate Ecstasy. This is Ivy's first foray into horror, unless you count that fork scene and Sing Her Down, which really got to some people. So we're going to get to all the good stuff about Ecstasy, but just to help introduce Ivy a little bit, I was a reader and a fan of hers before we started working together. And that's really because she creates the amazing, indelible female characters who are terrifying and unpredictable and recognizable. And that's what we have here. At the heart of Ecstasy are 2 women from very different walks of life. Wealthy, frustrated, sort of kept woman, Lena, whose husband has just died, and another woman, Luce, drug dealer who craves power and control, and selling drugs makes her feel like a god. And Ecstasy reveals what happens when these 2 women come crashing together. And it is fabulous. So let's dive in. Ivy, when we first met, you said that you were interested in exploring horror as a category, that you were curious about it. And I would love to hear more about what you find intriguing about the genre, why sort of move into this territory at this point.
Sure. So it was interesting. It was for a completely different reason than the reason that I wrote this book. But one of the things that was interesting to me as someone who inhabits the crime, mystery, and thriller space is sometimes that genre is limited. I'm very, very conscious in my other books, Sing Her Down, These Women, in not exaggerating the violence, because I really don't believe in crime fiction in which the violence is over the top, done for effect, exaggerated. And I think that's a really dangerous thing to see, like ritualized violence in fiction, because in crime fiction, because ritualized violence is not a real thing. We love it on TV, True Detective, whatever. But at the end of the day, but sometimes that imposes a limit on crime fiction. It's sort of, I think crime fiction, unless it's speculative, does its best work when it's sort of reflecting things that are inherent and insidious in our society, but sometimes that doesn't get the point across enough. And because a lot of my work has to do with, at the moment, oppression of women or like women's place in society, it's like I'm screaming as loud as I can, and people are still saying, well, oh God, like women would never behave like that and Sing Her Down, or like, oh, those poor, streetwalkers or prostitutes and these women, and I feel like the horror was a way for me to go into, to amplify the stakes and make people listen and make it more horrific. Because like there are these horrific things in the world, and and I feel that if you're trying to play within the rules that I set for myself as a writer, which is don't, trade on like graphic stuff to like get reads or good read likes or whatever, that horror is a natural expression of the horror of being alive, of being a woman, of being someone from, a community that's underrepresented in fiction. So it just seemed like a natural place to take the sort of general rage I have against the world, which is so weird because I'm not really a rageful person.
Something we share. Yeah. So did you come into it thinking, okay, I can really push boundaries here and do something different that I didn't
Oh, for
have
sure.
gotten to do before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very careful in, the books I've written previous to make the violence. As you mentioned, it's funny, I've been talking about this book all day. I'm on a book tour in Europe. This book, Sing Her Down, and everyone's all upset that one woman sticks a fork in this other woman's face. I don't like, Jesus, have you read like a mystery? Like there's like body counts in the
That's
serial
the way
killers,
we're going.
like 45 people, and one woman in prison sticks a fork in another woman's face. That must happen on a weekly basis. But, you know, I thought, okay, well, that was as graphic as I feel comfortable doing. It feels realistic to me. It's gory, it's graphic. I mean, I described what it would look like to see a fork.
I remember.
If it looked like mangled spaghetti, I'm sorry. But it's not horror, it's real. But, I wanted to sort of convey even further, sort of allegorically what is happening to women in the world. The way, even the most, I'm sorry, I'm divorced. I'm sorry, everybody. I just have to say, I'm very happy for everyone who managed to be happily married. But I just believe that, like, even in today's modern society, things do break along gender lines in a way that I find just horrifying. And like, it's just the way the world works. And like, I'm screaming as loud as I can about that. I keep saying that expression. That's a cliche. But, horror allows me maybe to get you to pay attention. Whereas in crime fiction, you're like, oh, now it's a domestic suspense, that angry wife. I'm like, no, this woman's like really super angry. And like, she's something pretty damn horrific,
Well, that actually leads well into my question about the women at the heart of this book, Lena and Luce. Like, who are they? How did they come to you? What are they looking for?
Okay, so I'll tell you who they are, but first I'm going to say, like, most of the characters I write, even if they look nothing like me, are parts of myself, which is like hard for me to convey. Like, there's a woman people think is a psychopath, and Sing Her Down. She is not a psychopath. She is very intelligent and she's very even keeled, although her response is violence, and don't choose violence, but some people do. So Luce is she's a party woman drug dealer, and she's totally based on someone I know. She's based on this Uruguayan drug dealer in Amsterdam, who ran a restaurant, and she is this wild party woman. I mean, she could stay up till 6. She could stay up till 6 the next day, not 6 in the morning, nothing. But she was intelligent, and she was a survivor and a refugee from Uruguay. And she'd made this choice to live her life a certain way. And who am I to say that that's the wrong thing to do? I mean, I'm not, sell ecstasy, whatever. It's not, it's not like super criminal. And, I lived in Amsterdam at a time where rave culture and electric dance and EDM culture was like really, it still is really popular, but it has sort of come out of the underground, and there's huge festivals. And I knew a lot of people in that scene. So, but she's sort of trying to find meaning in that, because at a certain time, your clients grow up, your friends grow up, they get sober, they have kids. She is not that person. She's still, I mean, there's this great scene in the description in Tom Wolfe's Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test when they park the bus in San Francisco after a big tour, and this one guy cannot metaphorically get off the bus, and he's sort of propelled into the Pacific Ocean. And Luce is like that. Like, she can't get off the party. Like, that's who she is, and she's trying to find meaning in it. Lena is early 50s. That can't be right. Mid 50s. She had kids. Sorry to think about how she had kids. Yeah, she's like 24 kid. So she's a ex-ballerina who failed to be a professional ballerina and married rich. And she didn't quite understand the trade-off there. So she has come to Greece with her son, who's taking over his dad's hotel empire. And she starts to not regress, because I don't want to say regress, but revisit her party girl ways as a dancer in Europe with her best friend. And so she comes into contact with Luce. So they're completing each other in a certain way. She's the customer, Luce is the dealer, but they're more than a drug dealer and a party person. That's really selling them short. They have this philosophy of like what it means to be free.
That is so I've been thinking a little bit about this, and I don't think we've ever talked about your process when you're coming to a book, not just this book. It could be Sing Her Down or other books. Do you start like, okay, this time I'm going to talk about motherhood or aging or themes about the patriarchy, like, which is probably in every one of your books, but do you start there, or do you have the concept and then you start writing and those themes emerge and you decide, okay, I want to go down this path, or I want to go down this?
I will. This book is based on an ancient Greek play, The Bacchae by Euripides, and like all these themes are there. It's about like the king of Thebes, Pentheus, who's horrified that Dionysus has come to Thebes, and he doesn't believe that he's really a god. And Pentheus's mother is like literally off raving with this god, and so it's this question of who's right, and they're both right. Like Pentheus is probably right that this god is up to no good, and this god is probably right that these women should be allowed to follow him and not be oppressed by their mothers, husbands, and sons. I mean, so the themes were there, but then I put my own personal experience into there as like a woman who lives in the world and experiences like, you know, minor oppression. So yeah, minor or major oppression.
Right.
Everyday oppression.
Okay. So, you sort of, teased a little bit about what the, inspiration for the book was. So let's talk a little bit about why go for the Bacchae? What was your major, driver there?
It's like an amazing play. I mean, it's just, God, this is gonna not win me a lot of friends, like or maybe I'll get some cool nerdy friends. But I translated the Bacchae in high school, and we spent like a year reading it. I know, so it's a conversation killer right there. But like I knew it really, really well, and it's much more modern than the other Greek dramas. It feels really relevant, and it feels very, evergreen in the sense that they're literally going to raves on the beach. Like they're going to raves on the mount, with Dionysus. And I remember reading that, and I was in high school when raves, I graduated from high school in 1994, and rave culture was huge in my high school. Like we got letters sent home from the principal saying, these kids are up to no good. So it seemed very real to me and very sort of, appropriate. It's always been first and foremost in my mind, just this idea, and during the pandemic, there's a lot of talk on a lot of op-eds about like how women hold this whole like burden of scheduling and planning, and like how there's this invisible mode women have. And I was like, oh, you know what? It never changes. Even in the nicest, most egalitarian relationship, there's this unequal balance of power. So I was like, well, what if women just like, wanted to let loose, and why is that unacceptable? And the grammar.
Or why is that terrifying, right?
Why is that terrifying? A better word. And why?
The last question I was just going to ask is just about rave culture and EDM, but you're going to give us a playlist at some point, and everybody will be able to experience that, experience that companion to the book. So
absolutely, you'll hear some of. I'm not a huge like EDM person, but I know enough. Yeah,
but you will. But you did your research.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, well that's it for us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.